just like that, the bantamweight division welcomes another opponent, and coming in this weekend, the Thai Panther. It's Tainara Lisboa, the former two-time world Muay Thai champion. Outside of the top 15 in this women's division, there's only 10 active fighters competing at women's bantamweight. I mean, already, Chelsea Chandler wins one fight against Yulia Stoliarenko. Here's your number. Norma Dumont doesn't even fight in the division. You're still ranked. You
Remember we talked about the heavyweight division? There's guys who are going to be ranked, guys who are currently ranked, and then there's a pool. There's a pool of Josh Parisian. The Taffas are in that pool. Parker Porter was in that pool, but he's slowly climbing up. Bantamweight is in a very similar position.
Well, when you look at this fight, Lisboa gets to take on 4-4 promotional fighter, Jessica Rose Clark. And when we do break this fight down, Matt, it is really difficult. I mean, you look at somebody like Tainara Lisboa, and if you just go over to her Topology page and you go all the way to the bottom, you're going to see a Muay Thai fight against Valentina Shevchenko in 2010. And if you're, happy with that, then you just don't go any further. But if you're not, and you're a little bit of an internet sleuth, you can go over to YouTube, you can watch that fight. Shevchenko drops her with a nice combination, nice 1-2. She stuns her with like a front kick to the face, which was pretty cool. I guess it was a side kick to the face, and then Lisboa had to fix her top at the same time. It was one of those kicks that just transcended body parts. But when you look at it overall for Tainara Lisboa, she loses that fight to Shevchenko. She still is a two-time world champ at Muay Thai. She goes on to take on one Norma Dumont in her UFC debut, who I already mentioned, and in that fight, she doesn't get the win, but since then, she's beaten fighters. And she's beaten fighters.
And do they have good records, though, or good levels of experience?
No, so for Tainara Lisboa, she has 5 wins and 2 losses, and out of those 5 wins, the combined opponent record is 3-6.
Which isn't phenomenal. And that's
Sorry. 3-6 out of all the 7 fights, because Norma Dumont was also a debut, and Lorani Santos, who beat Tainara Lisboa, was 2-1 at the time. She's 6-1 now, but overall, Tainara Lisboa has fought less than competition in MMA. However, in the wins, she's looked really good, and in the losses, there's been moments, but out of those wins, what I've seen out of Lisboa has actually impressed me enough to the fact that I think she's actually going to have a decent time in the UFC, because if you watch her strike, she's kind of a sniper on the outside.
Very accurate.
Nice low base, really good leg kick. She holds her hands out quite a bit. She lands a nice jab, 1-2. She likes to clinch fighters up. She has a very strong upper body to go for throws, and when she gets the plum clinch, as a Muay Thai fighter is somewhat expected to do, those Thai knees are great out of somebody like Lisboa. So I go down through all the rounds through this pro career, but what I do like out of Lisboa is she is very active. If she gets in a bad position, she's always fighting to get out of them. And when you look at a matchup like this for Lisboa, taking on Jessica Rose Clark, well, Clark is somebody that came into the UFC, polished as a striker, gained as a grappler. I know she's 4-4, and I know she has an 0-2 draw in her pro career against one Penny Kanzad, but where Clark struggles is in some of those in-betweens in some of the boxing combinations.
She does have all the skills, that's the thing. When you look at her striking, is it poor? It's not great, but it's not terrible by any means. She has good boxing combinations, a very aggressive fighter. Her wrestling, I would say, is almost at the forefront of her game now. So she is a very aggressive fighter, and every part of her game does work together. It's just a matter of putting them all together, and I knew we would talk about the resume of Lisboa at some point, but do you know the only big issue I do have with it? That's the thing. Sometimes guys come into the UFC, Chaos Williams, of course, being one of them, where they don't have a great level of competition, but at least they have that one person on their resume where they might have been 11-15, but at least they had a lot of experience. And that means something. You know what I mean? Their record isn't positive. They might not be the most eye-catching talent, but they've been there and done that. And even getting a win over a person like that, I think, does prove quite a bit. So it is going to be a tough test for Lisboa to kind of get that one experience skill check in the UFC, because the majority of the time, okay, your record might not be great, but you might fight one person who's like 7-10, 8-15, one of those records that at least holds some weight to it.
And that is the weird thing. If you do want to break it down for Lisboa, as I said, 7 pro fights, the combined opponent record out of 7 fights is 3-6. The last time out against Conceição Oliveira, she's able to dominate in the clinch, dominate once it does get down to the mat. She goes half guard to side control. At one point, she actually had a mount of crucifix. She locked that, her left arm up. She's landing really good ground and pound, and that's one of the best things about Lisboa. The ground and pound, whether it's with the hands, with the elbows, her positioning on top, she is very heavy when she gets on top in those spots. If you go down through it, I mean, again, Gloria Amaral, who was 0-1 at Dog Tower Fight 3. In that one, Amaral didn't really hang with it. Letitia Fajea, who's also listed under another name when you actually watch the fight doesn't actually start till the 16-minute mark. You find that one on YouTube that somebody filmed in portrait mode on their iPhone. In that one, Letitia, it'd be like if you threw me or Matt in there for poor Letitia. No offense. But the best part about watching the fight tape for this one was her last fight against Conceição Oliveira at Ironman MMA 23. And I texted you.
You did. I was
watching it because I made this reference last week, and I might lose some people here, but a great album. I mean, again, songs from the Big Chair. First song is Shout, but everybody wants to rule the world. So if you're going out there and watching Lisboa tape, I pray that you watch that Ironman MMA 23. It's on YouTube because, well, we have a Portuguese crooner. And I assumed he was just going to sing Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Guys, the guy had a set list and he played for 57 minutes. He sang Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Living on a Prayer, a deep cut from Bon Jovi with Always. He sang Bohemian Rhapsody, but when it went from I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me, the band transitioned to Radio Gaga, which is a great hit. Then he went into some Portuguese ballad that I didn't know. Then he went and sang...
But you appreciate it.
You talk about a guy with range. New Year's Day by YouTube, With or Without You. Now, I'm not a U2 fan, but that's neither here nor there. Then he sang Hear Me Now by Alok, Zeba, and Bruno Martini. I didn't even know Alok. Then he sang another Alok song called BYOB, and then he went with a Portuguese ballad, and then that turned into fights. That guy was on fire, and even if his English pronunciation wasn't very good, he was pointing out to the crowd. He was like the Pointer Brothers in that skit with Tim Robinson.
Oh, I'm thinking like from School of Rock where he hits the keyboard and points to the crowd.
It was awesome. Now, I've strayed away from the fights, but when it does come down to this one, I know for Jessica Rose Clark, she did get that knockout win before the 2 losses that she has recently, and even in that, like, she tore an ACL.
Exactly, which isn't a great injury.
And for Clark, and I did make a mistake right there, she tore the ACL in the Sarah Alpar fight, then she came back after the layoff, beat Jocelyn Edwards. Now, if you look at it for Clark in this matchup, she's kind of on a double up Randa Marco streak, and it's not
a little lose,
win,
exactly.
Lose, win. It's 2 losses, 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 wins, and that's just kind of how it's gone. But when you watch somebody like Clark, it's a lot of freestyle wrestling takedown. She will go for the clinch. She will get the upper body and try and go for the throws, which is what Lisboa does quite a bit. Boxing combinations to get on the inside. The only troubling thing for me with somebody like Clark is she eats the jab quite a bit, and when she eats enough jab, she'll get a little bit over aggressive and kind of rush in with her hands down, and that's where she can get caught by the second shot. That's what caused her issues against Pani Kanzad. That's the same thing that caused her issues against Jessica Ai. The Edgar fight's different because Clark went for the takedown, got submitted, and Stoliarenko was able to go for the patented armbar. Stoliarenko's got a big fight against Molly McCann coming up at flyweight in the not-so-distant future. So, Matt, I've talked a lot about this
fight.
Have. It is a tight one, all things considered, though.
I look at this fight a lot like I look at the Julian Erosa-Fernando Padilla fight, and it's a fight that I'm willing to get wrong in the predictions just because I do think there's something to be said for experience. I do think fighting people who know what they're doing at the highest level does really mean something. And from what I've seen out of Lisboa, she does have all of the skills, and I agree with what you've said. Her level of competition might not be great, but she is beating those fighters in the way that you would expect her to beat them, sorry. I just don't love the fact that her first huge test is at the UFC level. And that's why I do find myself going back to picking Jessica Rose Clark in this matchup. Not because I love the progress that she's made throughout her career. Not because I love her offensive wrestling. I just think defensively, I don't think she's going to give up the takedown. So I don't think she's going to be on the receiving end of a lot of that ground and pound that we've spoken about earlier. And offensively, I do think she will be able to get some takedowns. Now, is she going to get in dumb positions like Movsar Evloev did last weekend? Probably. But I still think her in those dominant positions is going to be good enough to win out the majority of the rounds.
And it is a weird one because there's an MMA fighting article out there from May of last year. That's when Lisboa was signed. Why has she been on the sidelines? I don't know. She hasn't fought in over a year coming into this one. Jessica Rose Clark is favored to get the win in the matchup ever so slightly. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. Surprise to us, they are to you. I'm going to assume people are going to Topology deep dive, and they're going to say Lisboa's not a good fighter, didn't watch the tape, and she's kind of a scrub. I'm going to say over under 75% Clark in this one.
I think it'll be under 75, but she'll be the favorite.
It's slightly under. 619 total votes, 69% Clark, 87% by decision for the 31% that had Lisboa, 43% by submission. So, yeah, they want the Muay Thai fighter to win by submission, which I know she has submission wins on her record, but
it's going to be tough off her back.
I don't think Lisboa is going to win by submission. submission, even if you look at Clark's recent fights. I think Lisboa has a ton of success on the feet in this one. I think the time away helps her. Again, does she come from the biggest of gyms out there? No, not necessarily. But the striking pedigree that she has, the age that she's at, she's not a fighter that I'm excited about like I was with Manon Fiorot coming into the UFC without a ton of pro experience. She was a little bit more tested, was Fiorot.
Yasmin Halhegi, she's looked phenomenal as of late. She looked really good on the regional scene leading up to it, too.
So, for me, I will go with Lisboa in the matchup, but I think this is going to be a fun one to kick off the card.
I feel like a lot of underdogs have hit on the opening fight of the card, especially in a lot of these female divisions, but I'm going to pick Jessica Rose Clark. Again, hopefully people watched the video and didn't just skip to the prediction part of this, because I gave Lisboa her flowers, and if she wins this fight, then I'll put a lot more stock into the wins that she did have on the regional scene leading up to it, because if you go out there and finish a Jessica Rose Clark, okay, it might not mean that you're ready for a ranking next, but it is a great, just name to have on your resume, so I'm ever so slightly going to go with Rose Clark, realizing, though, that this could be another situation like a Juliana Rosa Fernando Padilla, and everybody saw how that turned out for me.
Oh, we're halfway there! Wow!
Living out a prayer!
I mean, it was like having John Bovey from Saturday Night Live get you ready for a cage fight. Matt, in the matchup, I'm going with Tainara Lisboa in the debut. You're going with Jessica Rose Clark to get the win. Let us know if you went too far off the rails and who you have down below in the comments section. Some big fights left on this card. You're not going to want to miss any of it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.